Hello blade fanciers. I got a fancy blade for you today at This Old Sword Blade Reviews. This is This Old Sword with you. And we're back to TwoSun. It's been a little while, but this is a new TwoSun for me that dropped recently. And it's a beautiful blade. Let's take a look at it. Kind of reminiscent of what Ray Laconico might do. However, this is not a Ray Laconico design. How elegant is this? This is a design by Night Morning, who very often designs for TwoSun and was the original, if not one of the original, TwoSun knife designers. I'm going to back out just a little bit so we can open her up. It is a flipper. Hard to believe it, but there was a little flipper tab there. This is the model TS169-M390. They usually add the M390 when there's been an earlier version in another steel. I'm not sure there has on this one. Usually when there's an earlier version, it was either D2 if it was way back when, or Sandvik 14C28N. But I don't recall seeing this 169 in a steel other than M390. At any rate, I'm happy to have it because I do love TwoSun knives, and I especially love TwoSun knives made from premium steels, such as S90V, M390, 110V, I believe they have one blade made in that was a Tepe design. But we just have a beautiful and elegant, it would be a spear point blade if it weren't for the fact that it had that little drop right there, that little clip. So it's a spear point clip. I don't know. It's a flat grind, extremely fine edge and sharp, and if I have a moment I will chance a paper cut. I say chance a paper cut because very often my cutting technique before the camera is not that great. But before we get into that, how about some specs so you can get an idea as to how it sizes up. Overall length is not small, not huge. A little over 8.5 inches. We're going to call it like an 8.6 overall. 3.5 inch cutting edge. And we'll call it like a 3.7 inch blade. Because we have what could constitute a small usable choil there, although it's not a cutout choil. It's kind of the rounded portion where the blade and the handle merge. So yeah, you can choke up. There is no jimping on it, by the way. Let's roll into some other dimensions. And if we grab the handle in the middle, we get a 1/2 inch. If we grab the handle across the pivot pin, we get 0.6. So I'm not sure if it tapers or not. I think it does taper. I'm going to see if I can grab it on the handle. Yeah, ahead of the pivot. Get a 0.58. But the part your hand's going to ride on, that's a 1/2 inch. So we're going to call it a 1/2 inch. Okay, if that's okay with you. How about the blade stock? We get 3.4 millimeters. And finally a weight. You know, I used to read all these off of websites, but so often they're incorrect. I figure why not spend the time doing it live, so to speak. 3.57 ounces. Yep. And my scale likes to move around. Must be it's so sensitive that the air from my speech is making it heavier or lighter. Who knows? But you gotta love TwoSun when it comes to these ornate, modernistic designs with milled titanium. Look at the ridges that are in there. Look at how small the flipper tab is. You think it wouldn't even work, but you come in front of it, you light switch it, and it opens very easily. And still, it has a nice detent on it. I can't get it to shake free, although I could be pressing on the lock bar. Speaking of that, we do have a hardened steel insert on the titanium handle, butting up against the M390 blade. Let's do some comparisons, and it's interesting because the way the clip is, I can't get that to stay that way for you guys. I had to sort of prop it up for the still for the thumbnail, but we'll leave it there for now. Against the Griptilian, we have a very similarly sized knife. It's slightly longer overall than the Griptilian. You wouldn't think it, but it's a long, slender knife. How about against, because it's nearby, the Kubi Carve? Not a similar knife, but Carve is a little shorter. And since I happen to have it on the table nearby, how about the Petrified Fish Warrior 949? It's a same length, pretty much. Warrior is ever so slightly longer. Take another tour around. And yes, pretty much the only way to open the knife is with the flipper tab. Blade to handle ratio, you could have a little more blade, I suppose, but sometimes then you run into picking it up with your finger, and it's not a pleasant feeling to have that stick in your finger when it rubs by. But we have a point that angles down. That might have even been the rationale for doing that. Makes an interesting blade, but it also tucks it into the handle a little better near the end. Still, it's not bad. You do get a decent size blade. It's so simple that there's almost not a whole lot to see. A very plain backspacer. No provision for lanyard. I don't think you'd want to, interrupt the flow of this with a lanyard hole, that is. Nice low profile clip, no hot spots. It's a neutral, totally neutral handle. The only thing I could think about with this is that it might roll a little in the handle if you're doing any work with it, but once you get your fingers on there, it's really not bad. No jimping, but interestingly enough, you've got some jimping there. When I first saw it, I thought, well, I can flick it open with that, but it's not rough enough. It doesn't stand up over the handle enough. It's almost flush. So really, we get back to the flipper tab, which for me has worked 100% of the time. It can be a very fidgety knife. Not exactly drop shut, but smooth and on bearings. So there you have the TwoSun. Not even going to give me a final shot with it straight. But there is the TwoSun TS169-M390. Hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe. We'll catch you soon.